Hi, I'm Sean Irvin, the Sioux Falls Planning Commission Chair. We're here today to talk about the planning preview for September 5th meeting. We hope that you can join us, and we're thanking you for joining us today. I have with me Jeff Schmidt from Sioux Falls Planning and Zoning.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeff. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Good. We're going to talk a little bit about the September 5th agenda. We have a number of items. We've had some longer meetings just recently, but this one looks like it's a pretty good set of things to discuss. So
Correct.
We'll get right into it. First one is a rezone from Live Work District in C2 Commercial and to the O Office District, northwest corner of 57th and Dubuque. I'm guessing that's near Gloria Dei Lutheran Church over there in 57th? Okay.
Correct. Yep. And out there, they've been building some of these office buildings on the north side of 57th Street. And as they got down, or they're getting down to that far east end, there is this small 2-acre piece of commercial land that they thought was going to be commercial, and it's not. It just, their office is working really well for them, and so they'd like to rezone it to office. So that seems to make sense, but we'll go through the public hearing process and see. With all of these rezoning items, we as planning staff, we look at the comprehensive plan, see what's appropriate. We write up a staff report and we give it to the planning commissioners. Planning commissioners look at it and they go, so should it be C2 or should it be office? That's kind of the choices that we have. There's a recommendation for rezonings and they go.
They're somewhat compatible with each other and with the neighborhood things.
Correct.
So.
And then your recommendation goes forward to city council. So, that's really where we're at. We're not talking about, well, what kind of offices are there? What's their rents going to be? We don't discuss that. We just go, if it's already commercial, could it be office? And we have a public hearing on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this is a good example of kind of trying to predict what that market really wants when a developer first starts, and then as they start to get a little farther along, there's other things that are kind of driving the market, and they obviously have an interest of trying to build on what they have. So good example of kind of being a little bit flexible in how the future goes and give people what they're looking for.
It's really a crystal ball for a lot of these things. Was it 5 years ago, 6 years ago? I'm trying to guess. They came out and they said, this is going to be office, and down in the end, we're going to have a 2-acre commercial piece. And now 6 years later, they're like, well, maybe not a 2-acre commercial piece.
Sure. Makes sense. Looks like the next one is a rezone from RT1 single-family residential to the RT2 townhome residential traditional. 133 North Trapp, that must be just east of Axtell Park School by maybe 5-6 blocks, something like that.
Yeah. This is a rezoning, but a little bit different type of rezoning. We have 2 of them kind of on this council's or planning commission's agenda. These are existing homes. They're residential traditional homes, RT. And when we look at the big city of Sioux Falls, we rezoned some of these properties, and actually this house has 2 units in it. So it's not a single home unit, it's 2 home units. So the applicant came back to us and said, I'm not 1 unit, I'm 2 units, so there's going to be a rezoning from 1 to 2. So that's, if you deny it, if we go, no, you're not 2 units, he's still sitting there going, but I am 2 units.
So we're just trying to clean up some of the non-compliant things that were shifted as we redid some of the other
We still have to
zoning
change the
categories.
ordinance, we still have to have a public hearing, but they're actually there. It's a 2-unit building. But you don't, when you see some of these houses, you don't know for sure how many units are in them.
Right, and I'm sure that's been that way for quite a while.
Correct,
Looks like the next thing is an RT1 single-family residential moving to the RT2 townhome. Very similar to the last one we talked about at 209 South Jefferson. That must be just north of US Bank on 12th Street,
Correct.
I'm guessing. Okay.
Yes, and it's the same thing, where they have 2 units there and they want to get it to, and we'd like to get it to the way it is actually in place.
Okay, makes sense. Next one is a rezone from C2 commercial neighborhood streetcar to RA2 apartment residential. Moderate density, 5702 South Marion. That must be across I-29 from the Medibank facility.
Yes, yes, and just south of 57th Street on Marion, across from Medibank, across the interstate. This one, it starts at 57th Street, and on the west side there's apartments. On the east side it's commercial. So this is on the east side, and it's going from commercial, and there's this couple acre site of commercial land that, again, they already on their property transitioned to residential and apartments, but they have this piece that they're like, we'd like to start here on our commercial land and make it apartments right away. So they're starting on the north end. They're going to build their first apartment building. It's going to be 36 units, and then they'll continue out the rest of their apartments. But they owned a piece of commercial that they don't want to build on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like it'll be a good transition.
Correct.
Since it's a very similar use. Mm-hmm. Okay. Looks like the next one is RA3 apartment residential to high density I1 light industrial, 3800 West Tickman. That must be west of Armcon on Louise, I believe.
Correct. Up in that northwest part of town, west
very
of the
industrial uses right in the
very
neighborhood
industrial,
now.
west of the interstate. We do have apartments up there. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk a lot about, and this isn't a live-work district, but a lot of areas where you live and work in an area. So in an industrial area, you can have apartments. Mm-hmm. And originally, this property owner had a parcel that he wanted to build apartments. Now, as we've talked about today in the show, the market just hasn't made it for apartments up there, and they're going, everything else up here is industrial, all the industrial buildings are coming in, you know, let's zone it to industrial. And so we'll have the public hearing.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see, next one is a rezone from RS single family to RD1 twin home or duplex at 608 West 57th. This must be across from Faith Baptist.
Correct. On the north side of 57th Street along Duluth. It's that northeast corner. The video will really show a lot about this site. It's very severe. Mm-hmm. It really drops down. Everything else in that area is single family, but it is on 57th Street. Along a lot of our busy arterial streets, you have RD. RD is twin homes. So you have two single-family homes. They're single-family homes that are attached together, a twin home. And so on this lot, it's going to be tough to try to get something to work down in that hillside without access to 57th Street. They'd have to access on Duluth. So to try to make that work, they're coming in and saying, again, we don't have designs on this yet. We don't have building elevations. We don't have building code. All that will be addressed later on when they bring construction drawings in. But right now they're just saying, could it be zoned to RD? Mm-hmm.
Which gives them maybe some economic advantages or something else that makes sense to actually take on a difficult site like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's see, next one is a rezone from C2 commercial. Neighborhood streetcar to RT, or no, it's also RT2, yes. Right? Yeah. And then it will shift to a live work. You just talked about a little bit about that.
Correct.
This must be across from the Pettigrew Heights apartments.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's the Bowden Center. It's that building. Okay. And across from the Pettigrew apartments, they would like to build a 4-story apartment complex. So along Spring and 11th Street, they want to take the existing structure and building that they have for Bowden and remove that and then build a brand new 4-story similar to they have on the south side of 11th Street. So to do that, they have to go to the live work district. There's some commercial in there. There's some RT residential traditional because there's some old single family lots. So they'd remove that zoning. And that's really the discussion we have. Is it still appropriate to have commercial there, or is it more appropriate to have live work, which would be offices and apartments, or apartments and offices?
Right, and you know, I remember the live work, a lot of those people would recognize as having little shops maybe,
on
or
the bottom.
Some office uses, just various things on that lowest level. Correct. And then residential up above that, right?
Correct.
So it's really kind of a nice neighborhood feeling of a space that really works for a lot of different things.
Correct. Again, along a busy street like 11th Street.
Yeah. Makes sense. Let's see, next one is conditional use permit for on-sale alcohol beverage at 6201 Southwestern. This must be that old village development at 69th, is that
It's
right?
at 69th, but this is on the southwest corner.
The southwest corner,
This is
opposite
on
side of that
of the
one.
village.
Okay.
And so on the southwest corner, there's a building structure going in there. And so for our conditional uses, this is our first one of a couple on this agenda. Conditional uses are allowed in these zoning districts. This would be basically a commercial corner, but if you don't meet all of the standards, you come in for conditional use. So the standard they're not meeting is they're not more than 500 feet away from a sensitive use. They're within 500 feet of a sensitive use. A sensitive use is a church, a house of worship, a school, a park, or a single family home. So if they were in the middle of nothing and they were 750 feet away, they wouldn't have a conditional use. But since they don't meet that standard, they come to a public hearing. We discuss it, and if there are any conditions that need to be placed on it, there'd be a condition placed on it.
Okay, makes sense. Let's see, next thing on the agenda is a conditional use permit for off-premise sign, otherwise known as billboards, right?
Yep.
At 4300 West Empire. I'm guessing this is the northwest corner of Empire Mall property?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
yep. On that northwest corner, along the interstate, we're in South Dakota, and we have this large tourism traveling public, and so they really like to advertise on off-premise signs to the traveling public along the interstates. So we have a tenant or a applicant that would like to bring in a off-premise sign there. The request is over 288 feet. If it was at 288 feet, they wouldn't need to request it. They could just put it in, but the standard size that they generally use nowadays is larger than that. So then what conditions would you place on it? Has to still meet the spacing requirements. We can't have too many in a row. And then they have to meet the height requirements and all these other standards.
If I remember right, we're just about maxed out for the number of spacing requirement availability there are for billboards.
Right.
So after this one, there may not be many more.
That's
Is that
always
thought?
the discussion. You know, if one goes down, you could possibly put one up, but there's these opportunity corridors. They can't go in just any zoning district. And we can't have too many in certain locations, and so this is one of those probably few places that it could go.
I remember we had a very thorough discussion
Yep.
between the commission and many other points of input, including city council,
Yeah.
about how we should kind of appropriately allow some of these billboards to be placed, but yet not let it kind of interrupt too many things that are going on in the communities, neighborhoods, things
Correct.
like that. So we had
Yeah.
lots of discussion about
Yeah.
that. Okay. Looks like the next item is conditional use permit for on-sale alcohol beverage, like you said, the second one of those. 6801 South Louise. This must be just north of 77th Street, I'm guessing.
Yes, 74th. It's there's retail strip malls there, tenant buildings there, and they would like to open this on-sale facility there in one of those empty tenant buildings. But to the west, they're single-family homes, so they need to have a conditional use.
Okay, very good. Let's see, and then the last one on our agenda is an initial development plan amendment for the Avera McKinnon South location at 69th and Louise.
On that southeast corner, and again, the visual will tell a lot. I mean, Avera has done a lot of work on that corner. There's new buildings going up as we speak, and so.
And before they even started, there was an initial development plan showing here's how we plan to do all of these things, including our signage, including traffic flow, including all those things, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And so at that time, it went through Planning Commission, and they showed here's the buildings that we want to have placed, and we had a public hearing. Anytime they significantly change that plan, they have to come back for an amendment. So the changes that they have now is they had two buildings on their east side along Hemingston Place, and they're adding a third building along Hemingston Place. So that's a significant change. They had two, now there's going to be a third building along there. And on 77th Street, they did not show a building. They talked about a future structure on the south side. Now they're proposing to build, it's about a 60,000 square foot I can't remember exactly what they're calling it, health and development, but it's basically a fitness facility for training athletes on the south side along Louise and 77th Street. And so those two buildings that are being really added to their initial development plan.
Okay, good to know. Well, and I think a lot of the reason for that initial development plan for the city's purposes are to kind of understand how these fairly large developments fit into the rest of zoning and everything else, because they do tend to be kind of multi-use and they generate things that maybe we can do for, maybe it's berming or different zones to kind of separate uses that appear to be, maybe there's a little bit of conflict there, so we can make sure that those things are done wisely, right?
Yeah, and we really want to coordinate it. You know, when they bring in the plan to begin with, we ask all these major campuses, institutions to say, we want a coordinated plan, because we understand a lot of times your workers will go from building to building, so are we double counting the required parking? Well, what about the customers? Are they walking from building to building? Well, yeah. Okay, well, do you have walkways from building to building? Well, okay, well, we need to coordinate the walkways, the parking, the landscaping, the signage. If they're all independent, you haven't coordinated the whole plan.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Let's see. And then I think we wanted to talk about just, you know, kind of leading off of a couple of our discussions at the tail end of planning preview the last couple of months. Yeah. There's always a number of things that come up as we consider something. Some things are absolutely pertinent to what our decision is. Other things are kind of managed by the city and kind of considered by other staff that then the Planning Commission gets that consideration and how the staff feels about what might be an impact. Today, I think maybe we talk about traffic volume numbers. I know the city, as they're considering adjustments in the streets, as they're considering maybe closing a block of a street, or maybe opening a new street element, or when it should be paved, when you're talking about more of the perimeter areas, they do traffic studies to see, well, how much traffic are we getting across this area now, and how do we anticipate for the future?
Correct.
Don't we?
Yes. You know, we can look at it on a site-by-site specific location, and now I'm thinking about, we just talked about with Avera, we really try to coordinate not only larger sites, but the entire city of Sioux Falls. So, you know, trying to talk about this huge complex issue really quickly, there is traffic manuals and there's traffic models that help communities throughout America do this. And the amazing thing for the citizens to try to grasp and understand is, a single family home like I live in, they know, they average that basically every day 10 trips a day come out of a single family home. And a trip is there and back. You got a trip. Okay, so they'll say, okay, so how many single family homes do you have on this block, in this neighborhood, in this community? And they can then build off 10 trips out of each unit, and they can put that into the computer model, and then they know that there's that many trips on this street. Okay, they can do the same thing for an apartment, for an office. Offices are different. Is it a medical office? Is it an insurance office? And there's different traffic volumes. You can get to a church, and on a church there's 9 trips on each unit, which is 1,000 square feet. If it's a nursing home, there is 7.5 trips out of each 1,000. So they can type in all these things. Then what it gets really amazing is then you start looking at, but where are these trips going? Okay, well, they're coming from home to here. Well, we need to know where the homes are at and where are they going. So it's like looking at ants on the ground, and we know that each car is going to, well, they're not all going to the right. Some are going to the left and some are going straight. And so then we can have them flow throughout the city of Sioux Falls by putting in these numbers, and pretty soon we go, in the year 2040, we have this much traffic going through the city of Sioux Falls by how much growth we know we're going to have. And then you see glaringly, this street's not going to be big enough. So in 2018, we can look ahead. In 2040, we know that by what we're programming today, we need to have a bigger road here. Maybe not in 2019, but in future years, this road needs to be bigger, this one's still okay, and you program the roads that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And they commonly translate those things, I think, to kind of an hourly traffic flow. I know we
average
did that
daily
at Spellerberg Park, for
Right.
example,
Yep.
and when you start to translate what sounds like a huge volume of cars, and you
Correct.
translate it to the number of hours of use that there are,
Yeah.
often you get a lot better flavor of how much traffic really is there. And it may be pretty compressed in certain times of the day, but
Yeah, and again, I think citizens understand that when you can talk to them in this general format, because while we're workers or we're traveling, we're busiest on the way to work and on the way home from work. And they go, yeah, I get, we're not traveling a lot at 3 o'clock in the morning, generally,
Right.
Or how many trips do you take at 3 o'clock in the day? I'm at work. Okay, that's how traffic flows too. Not everybody, but we can, so you have hourly volumes too. We know we're going to be the busiest from AM, we're busy at PM, and so you got AM, PM peaks. And those AM, PM peaks are generally different too because of all the stuff we put in the model. You're absolutely right.
right. So then as we, as Heath and his department start to look at things.
Heath, our traffic engineer, the city
Right.
of Sioux Falls. If not everybody knows Heath.
True.
Yep.
As they review all of these things, they look at a change in zoning, like we've been talking about
Yes.
so far,
Yep.
and they can say, okay, this will be a bump of, maybe 2 cars per hour,
Right.
Which is commonly what it turns out to be, I think. And then they can give their response that traffic will be affected, but it won't be detrimentally so that
To
it
the
won't
overall.
hurt the street. It as long as it doesn't flow through the incorrect neighborhoods, which is so often why we like to put the higher density things closer to arterials, like
Correct.
we've talked about
onto the
before.
streets that they really need to flow on. And at the same time, if there is a lot of traffic, that's the traffic impact. We go back to these developers and these builders and say, it's your responsibility to help coordinate with the traffic department to say, now you have to adjust on these streets additional turn lanes, more right of way. We may need to put in a median because we can't have the traffic. So that's why we look at the numbers specifically, but it has to fit into the overall plan that the city has.
And that's why so often we see the driveway entrances not at a corner. They're
Correct.
several
Set back.
hundred feet away
Correct.
to prevent that kind of interruption of traffic.
And
right?
again, citizens, I know you're understanding this and you're grasping this, because nothing makes you more upset than when you're sitting there and you're trying to get out and there's cars all the way back and you're like, well, why can't I get across? That's the queue. You're sitting there and all these cars are queued up and you can't get across the street. We generally know that, and that's why we'd put a median there anyways. So then right-hand turns work, but left hands, we have to look at all of those issues.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the end of our agenda.
Yeah, a lot of items.
You bet. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you for listening to what we have to say. We look forward to hearing what your thoughts are on any of these items we discussed today. Just come to our meeting on September 5th. Starts at 6 p.m. We'd love to hear from you in opposition, in favor, whatever that might be. We love to hear from citizens. And we have, as we talked about last month, started doing an open discussion at the end of our agenda. So if you have some thoughts about things that are maybe not on the specific agenda for September 5th, but would like to come and share some thoughts with the commission, you're welcome to do so. That'll be at the agenda, at the end of the agenda on September 5th. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again.